100 meters butterfly at the last 2016 Olympic Games in Rio, among many other achievements. And Mrs. Alba Torrens, 2 times Best European Basketball Player, 5 times EuroLeague champion, 2 times European champion, and silver medal at the last 2016 Olympic Games in Rio, just to mention some of her biggest achievements. Before we start with the actual panel, I would like to remind everyone that after the initial discussion with all the panelists, there will be a Q&A for all who are interested in asking some questions to our panelists today. And now I would like to ask Mr. Joaquin Maria de Aristegui, CSD Director General of Sports, to share a few initial words.
Thank you very much for this introduction, Mr. Codina, and allow me first of all to thank all the institutions that have launched this initiative for doing it, starting with Sport SG, La Liga in Singapore, and of course our embassy in Singapore. Just to know exactly what is Consejo Superior de Deportes, which stands for High Council of Sports. It's the public structure at the government of Spain with the level of State Secretariat, Deputy Ministry, in charge of managing high-level elite sports. We not lead or manage, have a direct competence on grassroots sports. We do coordinate with our local and regional review elite and high-level sports. That's what we do. So our duty basically is to execute the government's policy on sports. Now, I just wanted to mention at this very brief introduction that our main interest in participating in this meeting is to share with all participants and organizers our experience during COVID-19 and the current phase of de-escalation. As many countries, we were hit. We were hit at an early stage. It was a terrible damage for us, both at the human, social, and economic level. But we have been able, we believe, to draw useful conclusions that we are already seeing in terms of results. And during this summer, in July and August, hopefully, we would like to share with you how what are our conclusions and our evaluation of what we have done since February. And we think that it's also time, and that's why we thought it was very good that we had this meeting with Singapore counterparts, that at international fora and at the diplomatic level, we tried to work together, meaning the countries that have had to deal with this problem and have been able to be innovative and effective in fighting COVID-19 from a sports perspective. So I don't know if, Mr. Moderator, you want me to explain what we've done, or I would rather leave this to your questions, and then the interaction. I'm in your hands.
Thank you, Mr. Joaquin de Aristegui. So it's if you are okay, it's good, if you can share a little bit on the things or the measures that the CSD has taken in Spain, but we can also share with some of our guests, and then also we will continue later with some questions.
Very well. So I'll try to be very quick. When we had to face COVID-19 in the darkest part of the pandemic in Spain, where we had a huge amount of people being infected, and unfortunately many were dying, we had to reflect here at the High Council for Sports on what to do with sports. There were countries where the first impulse was to cancel everything in terms of health security, and also because they didn't know basically what to do. This was a completely extraordinary situation. There were other countries that thought that maybe they needed more time and take stock of the consequences, and to some extent they basically kept life as usual, business as usual. And there were other countries like Spain that decided that we could not afford, being a major sports power in the world, to let go of our sports, let go of our athletes, and allow our competitions, our sports companies, and the careers of our best champions be damaged by a situation that we did not understand properly, but we knew from the beginning was terrible. So we decided to create a task force which had never existed before at the High Council. We brought together about 30 people from very different walks of the sports community, the sports ecosystem, clubs, high-level clubs from the La Liga, that, as you know, I'm sorry that Mr. Codina is listening to this, which is the best professional football competition in the world, along, let's give them that, with Premier League. We brought here people from our basket competition and federation. Spain is probably number one in basketball in Europe and one of the two superpowers in basket currently, both men and women. We brought people from the motorsport sector. You know, Spain is big also in MotoGP and Formula One and other specialities and discipline of motorsports.
No, porque la única historia que está planteando Antonio ahora, Juan.
Sorry, excuse me. For those who are not participating, could you kindly please mute your mics? Thank you. Apologies for that.
Okay, so we brought a wide range of people from the federation, sports federation, from the clubs, from also the managing community. La Liga was there. Also, the Spanish Royal Football Federation was there. You know, Spain is one of the only 7 countries that has won the World Cup and has been the CEO of FIFA World Cup too. And we thought that we needed to reflect together. So we spent about 3 days thinking very intensely what to do. And we decided to have, at the beginning, daily meetings, then weekly meetings. And then when things got a bit better and we had everything basically on track, which was about May, we decided to have meetings every 15 days. At this stage, we're having meetings of that task force once every month, except we have an extraordinary situation where we can meet, we can call ad hoc meetings. And during those meetings, the first phase from February to May, early June, we had to deal with the catastrophe that we were facing, sports that were facing serious economic and logistical problems, athletes that were unable to train. We needed to solve what to do with the major competitions that had a huge economic and reputational impact for Spain. We devoted most of the time to find innovative, as I said before, and new solutions, because there was no instruction manual to deal with this. And with the clear commitment by everybody, with the full support of the government, to keep our competitions alive and to help our athletes to remain on track also with the horizon of the new Olympics in Tokyo in 2021. You may recall that Spain was one of the very few European countries, and one of the first countries in any case, that called for the suspension of the Olympics, the 2020 Olympics, at a very early stage. Others joined our position later. But even if we asked for that, we decided that our athletes need to be able to be given the chance through new ways to stay fit and to be able to train, to be ready for competition at any time. So that way we were able to bring back to life La Liga. Spain started training and was able to finalize the competition only a week ago. It's one of the few countries that has done it, and certainly the only global competition that has done it so far. The Spanish National Basketball League men the final phase was developed in a very unique encapsulated format in Valencia, and was able to finish and to start and finish without a single case of contagion of COVID-19. We started, as you know, the agenda of the MotoGP Grand Prix calendar in Jerez, in the Spanish Grand Prix, just like last weekend, which was also very important because we were able to put this together, just to give you an idea, without the presence of public, of an audience at the circuit, at the track. You need to move more than 2,200 people just to make it work. And Spain's going to have between 4 and 5 Grand Prix of the overall list during the summer. So we brought back to the people motorsport through MotoGP, and we confirmed that in August, specifically on August 16, we will have one of the major F1 championships in Montmeló in Catalonia, which again was a very difficult challenge because from the economic perspective, it was extremely difficult to be able to guarantee that it could be feasible. And it was done, and it will happen, and it will join Austria and Hungary so far in the F1 calendar. Moreover, you may know that through the system that we are monitoring through the work, the task force for the impulse of sports, and few other smaller groups in charge of the attention to athletes psychologically and logistically. There's a working group for tourism and sports, so we can also help our tourism industry in the context of the installation. There is going to be a working group derived from the task force related to international promotion of Spanish sport. And there is going to be a working group in charge of reviewing the legal framework of sports after COVID. As I said, due to the good result of this teamwork from the sports ecosystem, we were able also to confirm that the first ATP Master 1000 tour that will happen in the world will be in Madrid, at the Mutua Open that will happen in Madrid. It will be the first major tennis tournament happening. And it will be in Spain, and it will be here because we believe that we were able to show that we are one of the countries that can provide with good experiences as far as safe sport, deporte seguro, which is our motto, is concerned. We hope that we'll also have one of the biggest golf tournaments coming over to Spain. It will be reactivated. We are very optimistic to have Valderrama. Those of you, and I know that Singapore is a major country for golf, so we are working hard to have Valderrama back on our calendar too. Of course, the fact that the world number one now is Spanish will give us further support. You know that a former resident in the sports school of the High Council of Sports, Mr. John Ram, has recently reached the number one position in the world for golf after winning the Memorial Tournament in Ohio. And we, in this sense, and I will close now, we expect that other competitions will be able to restart in the coming months. We have also been awarded with the women's UEFA Champions League final in San Sebastian. The men's final will be in Lisbon, and we expect to have a solid presence of Spanish teams. We're also working hard with the WHO, and I would like to share this as the last idea. We are working hard with WHO in coordination with our EU partners, so we can try in the coming weeks or months to reinforce the sports dimension, as I said at the beginning, in the multilateral agenda. I think one of the lessons that we have to learn from what is happening is that sport is much more valuable for people, for human beings, than we would have expected at the beginning before the pandemic. It's fun, it's true, it's economically profitable, but further to that, it helps people psychologically, physically, and this means that we have to give it more credit in the international agenda. So Spain is leading a preliminary effort. We would hope that maybe Singapore could join in the major international agencies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Joaquin, for sharing such detail. So now it is such a privilege to have two highly decorated athletes to join us today. And I'm gonna start, asking a few questions for our athletes, as Joseph only has until 5:30 before he heads off to his training. So we really appreciate both of you taking the time to share some insights with all of us today. Hence, if the rest of the panelists don't mind, I'm gonna go ahead and ask a few questions to both athletes. So this one is for you, Joseph. Michael Phelps said that he cannot imagine what current athletes are going through now, and that he's helping with anything he can do to help support his friends and others who want to try and accomplish their goals and dreams. How has the Singapore athlete community railed together in encouraging each other?
Hi, Ivan. Thank you for the question. Thanks for everyone for tuning in as well. And Ivan, to answer your question, I can't directly speak for the other NSAs, the other sporting organizations, but I can say for swimming, our high performance director, Sonia Porter, has been doing a phenomenal job, getting us pool space, giving us the necessary resources to carry out training. I know in Singapore, and Uncle Tek Yin can probably back me up on this, we're very lucky You know, like COVID has affected everyone around the world in a very bad way. But by the same token, I believe that Singapore has provided ample amount of resources and also training facilities to facilitate its athletes getting back on track, training for Tokyo 2021. It's really weird saying that 2021. But at the same time, I believe that everyone has come together as a community. And Uncle Tekian said just now before this started that sports has become an even bigger way to bring everyone together. So based on a high performance way, I believe that the gyms are open for all the athletes, of course, in limited numbers. The pools are open, which is huge for swimming because staying out of the pool is for a long time can be detrimental to your career. But at the same time, we're very lucky over in Singapore having all these resources and being able to train again.
I'm glad to hear that, Joseph. I hope that you can continue training very, very hard.
Thank you.
So Alba, this one, it's a different sport, you know, like, and of course, you know, like you coming from basketball, I'm sure that there might be some things that you personally relate as an athlete, but being basketball a team sport, how have you and your teammates supported yourselves since the pandemic started?
Hi everyone. First of all, I want to thank you all to have me today here, to thank the audience too that today are listen to this webinar, and it's a pleasure. And at the moment, I'm playing in a team UGMK in Yekaterinburg in Russia, and I'm playing for the national Spanish basketball team as well. And at this, since the pandemic, both competitions are canceled. So we are living a really difficult situation. With my teammates from Russia, we are all from different places, different countries, different cities. So we are all living this situation in a different way, but I regularly keep in touch with them. We are talking about how we are approaching, how we are facing this moment of training alone that we are not used to. Normally we always train as a team, and now is a moment where we need to train by ourselves. And what I can see is that we all are living different situations, different scenarios, but what you see is that we all are feeling similar emotions, similar uncertainties, doubts. We see some restriction for our trainers because it's totally normal in this situation. And what I ask to myself is what can I do right now? No, and I believe that the support and love that we can give to each other is always important, but maybe more now, no more in this situation, to support each other, to help each other, to keep in touch, to motivate each other at some point. And once again, it shows us that this situation shows us the importance to work as a team and to help each other and support each other even much more.
Thank you, Alba. Joseph, I would assume that your routines have been affected one way or another, of course, during this whole pandemic. What are the main differences between the current situation or your current training with the pre-COVID, and what do you think are some of the ways that athletes can somehow reinvent themselves?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. Going off what Alba said, you know, during this situation, it's very unstable, very unsure. Athletes have had to reinvent themselves and reinvent themselves in a different way. You know, some athletes might be different. For me personally, I don't think I was ready going into Tokyo 2020 this year. So having an additional year to prepare intrinsically will really give me a big boost. You know, I had a couple things to figure out during the circuit breaker in Singapore. For those of y'all that are in Singapore, the pools are closed. We couldn't visit friends or do anything. It was mainly home-based workouts. And as a swimmer, not being able to feel the water is a big thing, you know? So the first part, like Alba said, mentally, we've had to come to terms with, okay, this is the situation. It might not be ideal, but at the same time, everyone around the world is going through this pandemic and this current crisis. So instead of being like, okay, here, this sucks. I don't want to do this anymore. You gotta turn negative into a positive. As hard as that is, you don't have to feel great every single day. You don't, you know, but when it's what you do when you feel really negative about yourself and the situation, and turn into a positive that will really reflect going into the Olympics next year, I think the Olympics is going to be so different than it was going to be this year. Athletes are going to perform very, very differently. People that would slate it to peak at 2020 might not do so well, and those that thought 2020 was, you know, going to be a rough year, 2021 might be a whole different thing. So I think the mental aspect would be the most important thing. And secondly, the physical aspect would also be, you know, as an athlete, obviously very important. So just understanding that being out of the water for me is not a life and death situation. You know, at the end of the day, we play a sport to try to succeed at the highest level. But, you know, if I don't win another gold medal, does that mean that my life is in jeopardy? No, it doesn't. But in the moment when you dedicate your heart, your soul, your blood, your sweat and tears into something that means so much to you and is basically, you know, you dedicate your whole life to, then it could feel like the end of the world, you know? And I've definitely gone through some scenarios over the last few months where I thought, hey man, can I actually do this again? Am I ever going to be the same? And it's every time you make a conscious decision to say, yes, I will be better, you're already surpassing a lot of people that say, hey, you know what, this isn't for me. I can't do this. I can't do that. This is too hard. So at the end of the day, it's all those people with perseverance and will and the strength to succeed that will come out on top. And I believe in 2021, it's really going to show. It's going to be interesting, man.
Well, I can see that you have the mental part already figured out, as you said, you know, like now hopefully also, you know, your form it goes with you along this year of preparation until 2021. So all the best for sure.
Thank you.
Alba, you're a mirror for a lot of young girls out there willing to become professional basketball players one day. As a professional athlete, how do you think the COVID-19 situation is affecting the dreams of young children who are aspiring to become professional athletes? Do you think it's going to have a greater impact on for all of them?
I mean, the COVID-19 situation affects to all of us, all of us around the world, to any age. And I think that for all of us is very important to be conscious about what are the priorities right now and be responsible too. I think it doesn't matter the age, it doesn't matter the place. So I think that it's important to be conscious. At the same time, I'm seeing that as individual, and I think is the same for the organizations. It's very difficult to find the answer, to know how to act in this moment. There is so many emotions, and we are missing so much data and information, and we are all in a learning process. And I believe that we are all every day learning and trying to grow and trying to take the best decisions. And this is, I think, a good way to approach and to know too that is not easy. No, and what I don't know exactly. I don't know how it affects to the young athletes, what is possible to do or not right now. But I can talk a little bit how it affects me, you know, this moment to me, and what are my thoughts, and I try to repeat to myself, and I try to apply frequently, even if it's not easy. And it's that we can control so many things, not in this moment and not in other moments in our careers or in our life. It's out of our hands. And what we really can do is to control our attitude and our way to approach the situation. With all of this, I don't want to be negative, but yes, realistic. I think that we need to find the balance between the passion of our dreams and the logical of how to act responsible with the measures that we need to take, and accepting the restriction that right now we all need to face up. And I believe that it's important to keep dreaming, to keep our goals alive. But at the end, the dreams are the future, and we need to come back to the present moment and to ask ourselves, I think each of us, what we can do right now, what we can do right now that it will help us to have more probabilities to reach our dreams, whatever are those dreams. We don't know if we will reach, but I believe that what we will do right now, it can give us more opportunities to do it, no? And I believe too that on the way to our dreams, on the way to our goals, I believe that is where we find the meaning, is where we find the growth of ourselves, and is where we maybe can find a purpose or a different purpose too, because of this situation, the why we are doing it and for what we are doing it.
Well, too much uncertainty out there, that's for sure. But I guess that the key message here is to keep dreaming, no? To keep, chasing, and with the time we'll say what is the way to go and how things, little by little settle into place. Well, I think it's time for Joseph to go for his training. I don't want to be blamed if he doesn't grab that next medal in Tokyo. Thank you so much, Joseph, for sharing your valuable time and sharing today. So we wish you all the best, and I hope that you will succeed in your next challenges. So again, thank you very much, Joseph.
Thank you, Ivan. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and take care, everyone. We'll talk again soon. Yeah, have a good one.
Thank you. Alba, one last question for you. What sort of silver linings or anything positive that you might want to highlight, you can see from these current times?
As I have been saying, I think is to be conscious that we all are living a different situation is very important. There are so many people suffering the consequence of COVID-19 and in a different way, and I think that to be aware of that, and it's important. If I talk about my situation, if I talk about my experience this month, I think that I don't want to complain. I think it's important to give thanks. No, right now the most important is the health to everyone, and if I feel healthy, I think it's important to give thanks. And the reflections that I could make this month at the moment that I slow down the rhythm of competition is maybe to see closer what are my priorities in life. No, sometimes we are going to a really fast rhythm, and we are missing some of the most important things. And my priorities can be one, and another person's priorities can be another ones. No, and this moment I had time to reflect, to think a lot, and to ask myself, where I can improve, or if there is some things that I want to change as a person, as an athlete, to make a better impact. I think that the self-reflection and after, not just the self-reflection, I think after to take an action and try to apply all what we are learning, or what we making, the reflection that I will making, because I think that when we apply is when we really learn, no? And to finish, I think that right now it's a time where we need to embrace the unknown, and at the same time to keep walking ahead and support each other and help each other to go through.
Thank you, Alba, very much for sharing your thoughts, and it's great to see that even in these difficult times, still some positive, something, like a bright, to look into. So I really appreciate. So please stay until the end of the panel. I'm sure that some of our guests today will be more than happy to ask some questions to you. So now, Mr. Lim, thank you for your patiently wait for this part of the session. You and I have met several times, and it's a real pleasure to be able to ask a few questions to you today. The first one would be the sports sector is of significant importance to the well-being of Singaporeans. And we understand that Singapore has taken significant steps alongside the Ministry of Culture, Community and Youth, and to alleviate this situation. So could you tell us how has Sports SG dealt with the onset of the virus, and what are some of the steps taken towards reducing the impact of COVID-19 from an institutional perspective?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for the privilege of having us participate in this webinar. Truly appreciate that opportunity. And I do want to congratulate the Director General of CSD for successfully navigating this complexity and indeed providing that good news that you'll be starting some significant events again, because I think it requires first movers to give other people a lot more confidence that they can do the same. Unlike the CSD, Sports Singapore in a small city-state like Singapore has responsibility for the full spectrum of implementing government policy for sport, from grassroots to high-performance elite sport and events, as well as developing all the sport infrastructure, public sport infrastructure in the country. And so necessarily, as we were marching forward with that full spectrum of trying to integrate high-level events and how they inspire people to participate in sport, and how they will get our youth to participate, how we support our working population and our senior citizens in our country to remain physically active, and to build some nice facilities like the one you see in my background. COVID-19 disrupted all of that. And consequently, what we've had to do in Sports Singapore is to work closely with all the other government agencies to ensure, first of all, a few things. And the first and foremost was to try and protect jobs. And in our particular case, it was the jobs in the sport industry. Service providers that are enabling participation, service providers that supported events, service providers in the retail space. And just now we were speaking about a company called Decathlon, which is a very important retailer for making sport equipment and apparel accessible for all people. And so the government of Singapore put together significant budgetary support measures to support jobs, whether it was supporting employers with salary subsidies, whether it's supporting with tax relief and rent relief for many of the people who are anchored with facilities, whether it was about providing training opportunities for upgrading and in encouraging people to upgrade themselves in their industry, to provide training allowances while they are attending training programs, as well as subsidizing training programs. In addition, what we had to do was to help the sport industry navigate the various government budgetary support measures, and to put in place, over and beyond those budgetary measures, additional support measures. And what we did with additional support measures were, number one, we created an additional 500 jobs, particularly to cater to self-employed instructors and coaches who were displaced by the pandemic. We worked very closely with our educational institutions to expand the capacity for training programs. We put in place an innovation and capability development grant that was to be made available for players in the sport industry to think about how they would accelerate their capability development as well as innovation, particularly in the digital space. And we had to also take additional measures to support many of the companies that are responsible for the development of our sport infrastructure. The moment all construction came to a halt, there was obviously the risk that many of our construction projects that are in the pipeline, the companies that are involved in the pipeline would be affected by cash flow problems and the loss of sort of jobs and a loss of supply chains from their suppliers from around the world. So these were some of the additional things that we had to put in place. But I do want to say that for us, being able to capitalize on what's happening now is really about innovation. And when we think about innovation, whether it's in the digital space or really whether it's about reinventing events as we understand them, once you go digital, your competition is global. You are no longer competing within your own marketplace where the physical geographical location is your competitive advantage. Your competition now goes global. And that is something that many of our industry partners recognize when they try to bring their services online. Having said that, we were also very clear that during this period, we had to help people transit from their physical activity out in the sports facilities to staying active and exercising at home, and to also support other agencies in limiting the amount of movement outdoors, but still permitting people to find time to get out to exercise. So we were very grateful that in spite of the total lockdown of the country during circuit breaker, that exercising outdoors was seen as an essential activity, although it had to be managed very carefully. So we saw an effort to both control the level of activity outdoors, plus the need to bring more activity into the home. And we started a campaign called Get Active at Home. Beyond the normal sort of online exercise activities, we started to work with coaches and our academies to be able to provide some form of sport training at home and to try and create a social activity around that, presenting challenges that even if these were social media challenges and video challenges about what people were doing, in order to continue to encourage people to indulge in their sport, keep healthy, exercise at home, and also to encourage one another. So the final thing that I want to say is that one of the very important part of our work is to contribute to this bigger narrative that Singapore will emerge stronger from this COVID-19 crisis. And by emphasizing that staying healthy and well is part of uplifting the spirit of this country and rallying people together, that is going to be an important part of working together against this crisis and emerging stronger together. I think now that we are back at work, now that we are back to some level of economic activity as well as sport participation in our sports centers, We want to continue to work with industry to see how we will innovate to encourage, if you like, a much stronger approach to the new normal, right? So from a situation where we go fully online, how can we think about blended events that naturally sort of enable some level of activity outdoors and at sport facilities while continuing with that engagement when people are at home? So as an example, we have been discussing with Ironman, who runs the Standard Chartered Singapore Marathon, as to what we will do this year when it is quite inconceivable that we want to bring 50,000 people together at one location on one evening or one morning to run a race. And it is about now an engagement over a few months. It's about various virtual engagements and workshops on running, on health, on well-being. It's coupling that with offers on merchandise and then having virtual competitions. Whether part of the competition is an indoor competition that's run on treadmills, whether part of that competition is during competition week where people track their distances that they go outdoor and run with paces or on their own. The idea is that a single day marathon is now split into several months with different phases of engagement and different types of activity. So innovation is going to be very important to us. We are, for global international events, at the mercy of international travel policy. And to the extent that travel will start to open up, we hope that by next year, with the help of people like CSD, who are bravely charting the way forward for international events to resume, that we will start to welcome international events back to Singapore. And that's something where we all need to work together with smart management of all the measures that need to be put in place at different venues.
Thank you, Mr. Lim. I must say it's quite remarkable, and I think that this kind of conversations, allowing, the interaction between both entities in this case, is what can, help, to probably, find, different opportunities for collaborate and to learn, best practices from each organization. So, Mr. Joaquín de Aristegui, you have already shared some of the measurements and actions that the CSD has put into place to fight the COVID-19. How has the CSD pinpointed such opportunities, and what sort of solution innovations have resulted from this, especially in addressing the possible expectations of fans or audiences having to first experience a long absence of live sports and now dealing with the new normal?
Thank you. Well, as I said in my first intervention, when it came to pinpointing opportunities, we realized we had to be very innovative, very creative. It wasn't easy. So with the help of some of the key actors, including, of course, Liga and some others that do have a wide range of experiences in Spain and abroad, we came up with several ideas. We thought that the way to grab those opportunities was to keep, as I said, the competitions alive and find a new way to project them abroad. Maybe you have already shared this information with your partners in Singapore and the wider region in Southeast Asia, but it's interesting to note that because we kept our professional football alive, the audiences that have been watching the games worldwide have increased dramatically. So we thought that it was a good thing to keep it alive, to keep it working for the sake of the company and for the sake of the clubs that participate in the company. But we further realized that there was a demand waiting there, and the way this was done, even if we had to renounce to public in the stadiums, and there was a number of things that could no longer happen, well, these innovative solutions, for instance, through the virtual stands or through different messages that were used during the broadcast of these events, helped very much our clubs from an economic perspective, but also gave us the opportunity to be visible through other strategies. I would like just to mention, for instance, in terms of grasping some more opportunities, that we launched through La Liga a campaign which was called Spain Awaits You, España Te Espera, in connection also with the State Secretariat for Tourism, that was seen by everybody around the world through the projection of digital messages with Telefónica during the games, but also in Spain was a major thing to boost morale for our people that in the tourism sector, as you can imagine, until a few weeks ago were undergoing severe harm. That was one of the things. La Liga was able, and the ACB, the Basketball Association, were able to review their contracts. Maybe you could give more details eventually. Review their contracts and think out of the box to find new economic formats to make it profitable in the short and medium term. Maybe the only thing I would like to say is that sports resilience in this new normality, as you mentioned in your question, is big. It remains big, and as some other participants have said before me, we need to adjust, and things will not go to normal. This is the new normality. That's why it's called like that in Spain, because we will get some things back, but some other things will no longer come back, so we need to find alternatives. And I think that sports has shown that it can stand the first hit and it can adapt. We had a huge loss of income during the first months. Actually, I would also like to mention that the High Council for Sports has developed a very interesting report on how COVID-19 has damaged our sports infrastructure, and we are monitoring that report that we've done with the Association of Federated Sports in Spain. We are monitoring that report on a monthly basis, and even though the first data were terrible, we have already seen that the sports ecosystem is reacting well. So that means that it does have a great resilience capacity and also adjustment capacity. We will continue this way with other sports. We are now facing the challenge of cycling, for instance. The first big round that will happen in Europe and in the world of the World Tour will be in Spain, la Vuelta a España, the Tour of Spain. So we again need to be creative. We need to take care of the sponsors, of the teams, of the towns that are hosting this. So maybe after the Tour of Spain, we have a great Tour de France, but first we will need to have this kind of project pilot in Spain that will give many keys to how to do things in this new normality. There are other examples, but I wouldn't like to take more time. Maybe I will keep it open for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Joaquin. Mr. Lim, we are aware that Sports SG has partnered with a Global Sports Innovation Center, FSIC, prior to the current circumstances to launch a startup competition to nurture innovation, foster the entrepreneurship, and enable sports industry development. The COVID-19 situation has presented itself almost as a catalyst for the sector's reinvention. What would you say are some new possibilities or even innovations that might have emerged?
Well, I think we are absolutely delighted to be able to collaborate with the GSIC. Prior to COVID-19, we recognized the good work that GSIC was doing in Spain, and the access that we would have to all the great development in Europe that the GSIC was precipitating, not least with clients like La Liga. And so the big idea was to bring the GSIC to establish an Asian headquarters here in Singapore, and to be able to build that bridge and connection between Asia and Europe and even the Americas through the work of the GSIC. And by virtue of the nature of the focus on technology, this COVID-19 hasn't really stopped this collaboration at all, short of seeing an office open up here in Singapore. But we continue to stay very closely in touch and are looking through the work of the GSIC in such startup competitions to see how we might see innovations in the area of team and athlete performance, how we might see technology innovations to build that bridge between sport and wellness and well-being and health, how we look at fan engagement, how we look at media platforms, and how we think about smart venues. And I think we are happy to be able to initiate those collaborations in spite of COVID-19. And thus far, we have been very happy with the level of interest from some of the sport companies in this region to want to be part of the GSIC network. And I think that's a very healthy development.
That's very good. We hope that the situation gets a little bit better and to see the GSI office opening in Singapore. I think that the next question is somehow is a little bit, part of it has been already answered by Mr. Aristegui, but I would like to ask, La Liga and our clubs have really been cooperating and collaborating very closely during the pandemic to help the return of the competition. That's a fact. And also we have been able to provide some aid for sports and athletes, especially with the most vulnerable ones. Okay. Do you envision, Mr. Joaquin, an even closer collaboration between your institution and entities like La Liga and clubs or athletes once we overcome this huge obstacle?
Well, the way we approach the future relationship with the main actors in sports is that we will keep working within the pandemic. We are optimistic in Spain about how things will evolve. We have to be very careful, certainly not being over optimistic, but we tend to be. We think that the way things have been done will allow us to overcome this last phase of the pandemic. But as far as our interlocutors in the sports dimension are concerned, we will keep working with them like that. We will keep our task force active. We will try to react to the problems that will for sure come along as weeks and months go by and new competitions return. Our experience is that it's very difficult to take for granted that what we have done so far will work in every case. We think that many conclusions that we can draw can be useful, and we certainly have to orient our work in the direction that we have done since February. We are now focusing with our partners, including La Liga and others in Spain and Europe, with the economic recovery. So we believe that what we have to do in terms of health security is clear, and in general terms has been working very well. Even from the mistakes, we are able to draw useful conclusions, and now we're in the middle of one of those very few cases, working with La Liga on that as we speak in Spain. But we have to focus now on economic recovery. We have already presented an emergency economic plan to help our companies and our athletes and other sports sectors join the effort of trying to get as close as possible to normal in sports. And the recent result of the huge EU economic recovery program, as I say, that major historic plan agreement that was reached in Brussels just 48 hours ago, must have a reflection on sports and European sport and in Spanish sport, because it's important for every single EU member state, for every single European Union citizen, but of course it's even more important for EU countries that do have a clear influence internationally in sports. So that's what we want to do, and that's where we want to put the emphasis with our partners like La Liga and others from now till the end of the month.
Thank you, Mr. Joaquin. Mr. Lim, one last question for you. Nike believes that everyone with a body is an athlete. How Sports Singapore has inspired the everyday athlete and all who love sports in Singapore?
You know, if you are from the health or medical sector, you look at health as a problem that you need to solve. So you build hospitals, you make sure that your medical protocols can all solve for the problem of health. If you are from the sports sector and the fitness sector, you look at health as an enabler for performance in your life. If you're an athlete, it's performing in your sport. If you're a recreational athlete, it's about performance in other aspects of your life, whether it's your personal life or your work life. And in Sports Singapore, we believe that sport needs to be a strategy for a city like Singapore to enable us to sustain a 24/7 global city and yet provide for a lived experience where people aspire to be the best that they can be. And so as we begin to emerge stronger from COVID-19, what we want to be able to do is to work with the sport industry to be able to bring health and wellness in all aspects of life in Singapore through sport and physical activity, and to have that translated in the workplace as a high performance enabler. So we are starting to work with companies in Singapore to bring a formula with health coaching support for our workforce in Singapore in companies to be able to embark on a health and wellness program through sport and physical activity, and to see that translated into overall corporate performance. And how our athletes inspire that participation in our youth, and how our youth are able to learn through their participation in sport, how they bring those skills to their own lives, will be an important facet of that. How we work with families and parents so that they understand how they support the development of their children through sport is going to be an important facet of that. How we work with companies and how we work with other government agencies. So we are in a good position to shift the narrative from just one of enjoying the playing of sport to using sport as an enabler for Singapore to succeed. And by that, I mean all facets of life here. And we do want to work with the industry to be able to make that accessible and to bring that value, right? And so we have started that conversation a few years ago, and we continue with that conversation today with all our partners. So Sports Singapore sees our role as being able to deliver the value of sport to Singapore, not just sport itself.
Thank you, Mr. Lim. Thank you both, Mr. Lim and Mr. Joaquin. We could go on and ask many more questions, but I also want to give the chance, an opportunity to our audience today to see if they have any questions. So please, feel free to share in the chat if you have any particular questions that you would like to ask our panelists, and also Alba, who is also been joined in the beginning of the panel. So it would be great, to see if there is any questions from our audience. I'm just gonna give them a moment because I don't see. I'm trying to see if there is any particular questions. Well, if I'm not mistaken, I cannot see any questions coming from the audience, unless Laura, you can correct me if I'm wrong. So with that, we would like to conclude, the session today, but not before saying thank you very much for your time. We know that you both and Alba as well have a very busy agenda, so we highly appreciate your time today, sharing your thoughts, about the sports industry in times of COVID-19. Is very interesting to see how it's been the approach from both ends, the CSD and Sports SD, to fight, the current situation and see that there is actually, like a hope, and see how, are we going to be able, to somehow take advantage of the current situation. There is always a silver lining, as we asked before in one of the questions. So it's very interesting to see that we still have some hope, regardless, at the current situation that we are living. Apologies. So all of a sudden it started, going all the questions. So maybe I'm going to take a couple of questions. If you don't mind, I will share with you, and then with this we will conclude the panel. So I have a question for Mr. Lim. What are the requirements, like testing, for example, needed for the resumption of sports leagues like Singapore Premier League or the Asian Basketball League?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. In Singapore, basically sport competitions follow the overall national posture, right? A national posture for businesses that require interactions. So it's really going to be determined by the Ministry of Health as to what sort of activities will be allowed. And today we are working through the different protocols for the resumption of sport leagues. Those that are domestic leagues, I think is an easier challenge for us to solve because all the athletes are here in Singapore. Leagues like the ASEAN Basketball League will be a lot more challenging, or even the Suzuki Cup, which is a pan-ASEAN football league, will be a lot more challenging because it involves international travel. And it's not just the international travel policy of Singapore, but the international travel policy of our Southeast Asian neighbors. So until the situation stabilizes in many of the Southeast Asian countries, that's going to be a challenge. But for domestic leagues, we're working very closely with the Ministry of Health to work through the protocols. And like what we see already happening in Europe, when some of these leagues resume, we will definitely not have spectators in the stands, and we would have to see how we can create the sort of experience for the players to be able to give their best, and on the other hand, to be able to bring this into the living rooms of all the fans. So I hope that answers that question. But really, it follows the overall national protocol.
I'm sure it does. Thank you, Mr. Lim. One question from Mr. Joaquin de Aristegui. How can companies based in the US get involved and partner with the strategies mentioned by you in your previous answers?
So if I get the question right, so how companies in the US, can you repeat, please?
Yes, I'm going to repeat that. How can companies based in the US get involved and partner with the strategies mentioned by the CSD?
Well, I think that the main sports companies in Spain are global now. So, for instance, that's the case of La Liga, which is very present in the US, unless you correct me now. I think that you have a strong presence in the US. And so do other Spanish companies in the sports equipment industry, for instance, or even our clubs, both the biggest clubs, and I'm just mentioning the biggest because of their results, Real Madrid, the current champion, or FC Barcelona or Atletico de Madrid, first three in our league, they do have a presence in the US. So as companies, they can partner directly with their potential US counterparts. And as with regard to how can that have a kind of connection with our strategy, well, I think that it could be good that what we do in Spain to reactivate the competitions and the sports, when we do have partners, for instance, sponsors from the US, that could be an example, or other companies, it would be very good that through their Spanish partners there, or directly with us, through the international department of the High Council for Sports, and we could eventually give that detail to any company that is now participating or could be interested in the future. They get in touch with us because we will propose several initiatives. Some of them will be more of a social and diplomatic nature. I mentioned what we are trying to put together with WHO and UNICEF, and for instance, also the Human Rights Council and UNESCO. maybe they're interested in participating with us with this kind of new approach to what sport should be in international fora and benefit from international coordinated efforts. But we would also probably do some specific things connected to the major sports events from now till December if they want to join the effort with us around the concept of safe sports, which is the thing that we want to share internationally more. We can directly liaise with them and see if there's room for cooperation with us or with the other European partners under our helm. So maybe I will wait for a specific question or proposal through Spanish companies in the US that partner with us already, or directly to us at the High Council.
Thank you, Mr. Joaquin. I have one more question. Is for both Mr. Lim and Mr. Joaquin. How long can the public be absent from sports events like in La Liga? Is it not a major inconvenience for the athletes and the fans? Maybe sorry, for Mr. Joaquin, if probably is more relevant for you.
Well, during the worst part of the pandemic, one of the key issues was how to keep our athletes fit. So it is a very relevant question, of course. How long can they endure the absence? We are no longer in that situation, and we're very happy for that. There are other sports that need to come back, but for those that are better known in the world, and people identify more with Spain, that situation, we no longer envisage that situation, of course. And I'm knocking on wood. We may be facing a new upgrowth of the pandemic, unexpected in the autumn. We don't know, or in the winter. We are much better prepared now to face an eventual upgrowth or regrowth of the pandemic. Much better in the sports sector. Could that lead to stop in the competition? If it happens, I don't think it's foreseeable. But if it happens, both clubs and organizers like La Liga or ACB in basket or MotoGP, which, by the way, as you know, is a Spanish company too, that leads it, Dorna. Well, I think they are ready now. They are ready now to take care of their athletes and their teams, even in that kind of new isolation of that new confinement. We realized during the worst part of the first stage that it was absolutely critical to keep our athletes fit. They did it. I think it's one of the most amazing stories. If we could share maybe at some point, we will, in our diplomatic agenda, as I mentioned, share that. What our athletes were able to do. I mean, we were monitoring from the High Council what our big champions were doing, because here, of course, we have a person which is joining us. And she was a world champion, European champion, and silver medalist too in water polo. And she's in charge of taking care of the athletes. And she was monitoring every single case. And you could, of course, have huge athletes, from La Liga or ACB being taken care of, because there are many resources for them. But then you could see smaller sports with the big stars finding out ways to keep fit, in an absolutely exemplary way with a huge amount of sacrifice. Swimmers, getting ready for the authorization by the government to go back to the pool, swimming in their houses. You could see professional ATP tennis players, top 20 Spanish ATP players, which is amazing, playing in their small towns, tennis against the wall. I mean, nobody can imagine that, a guy that has played semifinals at the US Open, taking his racket and a ball and just trying to keep fit, playing against the wall near the church of his town. Those things have happened in our country, and they paid off, because those people were able, when we were allowed to authorize the return of training and then competitions, in many cases, they were psychologically and physically better. And I think it speaks very highly of our sportsmen and women and athletes. They were extremely resilient too. And well, as I say, maybe that's a good advice that people, as your champion, the Singaporean champion, mentioned, you have to keep mentally very strong and know that there will be another day and try to take it one day at a time.
Thank you, Mr. Joaquin. Sorry, I think we had a rather shy audience, and they were very shy in the beginning, but now I can see a lot of questions. This question is for Alba. What would you say to an aspiring athlete in these times, in these difficult times?
I don't know if I'm who can say an advice or a motivation message, but I can myself every day, and it's a little bit what I was saying, and we cannot control so many things in our life. We right now we are facing up a really difficult moment, really uncertain moment, and in my career or in my life, as we all know, we are facing up tough moments that are out of our hands. But what really we can control is how we approach right now, today. I'm trying to be always focused on what can I do today, asking to myself, what can I do today that it will put me, or I will have more probabilities to reach my goals and my dreams. I think that one thing that motivates me is to every day to set some little goal, to find joy in the workout, in the practice, even in these months that I have been practicing at home a lot, to find a goal that doing the workout every day at home, it was not easy. Sometimes it was alone, some days you are less motivated, but no matter what, to show up and to celebrate these little victories, because I think it's really where we can find the realizations of ourselves. Sometimes we are so focused on the results, and I think that we really can find so many meaning, lessons, and realizations in the day by day. And I think it will be my message, to focus on the day by day and to find everything that we are searching for in the little things to go for big things.
Thank you very much, Alba. Well, unfortunately, the time is out and we have come to the end of the session. So I'm sorry for those questions that we were not able to answer, but the time is out. So I would like to thank all of our panelists for the time and for the sharings. Thank you to Mr. Lim, and thank you to Mr. Joaquin, as well as to Joseph and Alba. Special thanks as well to the Spanish Chamber of Commerce and the Spanish Embassy in Singapore for organizing this webinar. And last but not the least, thank you also to all the audience that has joined today. So please all stay safe. And again, thank you very much. It was an absolute pleasure. And I hope you had been able to get some key takeaways from this session. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.